Good day. I am Professor P.S. Sridhar from Amet University from the Department of Marine Engineering. I am a Chief Engineer, and today I am going to deliver a lecture on dry docking, its importance, its preparation, the types of dry docks, etc., which are connected with the dry docking. Starting with dry docking is one of the most important aspects of shipping. Some of the reasons why a vessel may need dry docking is that whenever the class license of a vessel is to be renewed, then there are certain items that could be surveyed within the waters, what we call as normally the in-water survey. But there are certain items on the ship, some of the equipments or some of the parts of the ship which are not normally accessible when the vessel is in water, either in a loaded condition or in a ballast condition. For example, the propeller, the rudder, the hull, the underwater portion, the ship side valves, the O-board valves, and such items which are normally not accessible when the vessel is either partially sunk in water, partially immersed in water, or when it is fully immersed in water. Under such conditions, in order to examine, survey, and then certify and give the survey results, we need the complete ship to be, condition of the ship to be ascertained, for which dry docking becomes very essential. And also, under certain extraneous conditions, if due to any emergency or exigency, due to any unfortunate reasons, should the vessel meet with an accident, say suppose it is run aground, any of the tanks are breached, or it has undergone a collision with either a moving object or a fixed object like the wharf or a jetty or anything like that, when some of the parts of the ships are damaged, then to ascertain the extent of damage, for the vessel to be completely surveyed and to certify that the vessel is seaworthy, we need to dry dock the vessel. So, what is dry docking? What is dry docking? Dry docking is the art of putting the vessel in such conditions where the dock is dry. In the sense, the vessel has to be physically removed from water and put in such a condition that it is not in contact with the water, with the result each and every part of the ship is completely visible and is accessible, which can be cleaned, which can be surveyed, which can be measured, and for which the repairs could be carried out in such a way that the vessel is tested, certified and surveyed in a safe environment without any danger to either the vessel or to the personnel on board. Therefore, talking of dry docking, there are about 4-5 types of dry docks, but the major among them we will see is, one is your graving dock. These are some of the most common types of dry docks which are prevalently used, and this graving dock is also called as the basin dry dock. Here the arrangement is a kind of a pit is dug into a part of the harbor, and to which a hollow structure is made in which the vessel can enter the dry dock, and it has got what is called as a lock gate, with which the dock, once the ship enters the dry dock, then the lock gate can be physically moved so that it locks the dry dock, and then the water could be evacuated or pumped out so that the ship comes to the dry conditions. So, this is called as a graving dock or a basin dry dock. It is basically normally a part of an existing harbor or a port. Therefore, this is your graving dock. Now, this is a fixed dock and its size cannot be altered, and normally bigger type of ships get dry dock only with the graving dock, and it is part of the harbor. Therefore, men and material from the harbor or the port can work on the ships in the dry dock to carry out the repairs, measurements, their surveying and certification and testing. All those things can be done there. And next is a floating dry dock, which, as the name implies, is a dock which is afloat, and this floating dry dock is normally tethered or tied to any of the docks wherein the vessels can be brought in. And the advantage of the floating dry dock is that it has got ballast tanks with which the whole dock can be immersed in water. It goes beneath the ship, and then when the water is deballasted, the whole dock comes up with the ship. Therefore, this is the floating dry dock. And the vertical lift dry dock is normally used for smaller size vessels and your other pleasure yacht and such kind of crafts. And railway dry docks or dry docks wherein the vessel is pulled onto the slipway through the locomotions at the sides of the docks. So, these are the kinds of the docks. So, let us go into each of them. This involves placing the vessel in a dry dock or upon a slipway for docking survey or underwater work. Older vessels with the age more than 15 years generally need to dry dock 2 times in 5-year period, with the intervening period between the consecutive dry docks not exceeding 2.5 years. Therefore, within a matter of 5 years, twice the vessels need to be dry docked. And the major type of dry docks, as I have already enunciated, one is the graving dock, the other is the floating dock. Okay. Now, let us see what are the kinds of major jobs that need to be accomplished while the vessel is in a dry dock. In the method of dry docking of ships, we do the inspection and routine overhauling of mainly the underwater fittings like your stern tube, rudder, propeller shaft, C-section and discharge valves or overboard valves. And we also carry out measurement of clearances and drops and removal and fitting of propellers. So, these are some of the jobs which need to be done in the dry dock, and there are certain important precautions which need to be done before and after flooding the dock. Before flooding the dock, normally the shipping company liaises with the dry dock, and the dock master who is in charge of the dry dock requires certain particulars about what is the overall length of the ship and where are the fitments of underwater openings like your overboard valves or C-section valves, because once the vessel enters the dry dock, it is going to be seated on what are called as keel blocks, which are blocks upon which the vessel is resting. So, they need to take the entire weight of the ship when the vessel is in dry dock. And in order that the vessel in dry dock doesn't get a chance to either slip or fall off from the keel blocks, we give supports at the sides, what we call as the breast shore. So, the arrangement will be like this. So, these are called as keel blocks or blocks upon which the whole ship is seated, and then these are breast shores which support the vessel and prevents it from falling off or from, all right. So, the keel, the stern frame, stern post, rudder and outside hull plates are cleaned and examined, and also included in the examination of propeller, sea chest, sea valves, strainers and all the underwater fittings, stern tube, tail shaft, shaft seals, rudder bearing are examined and calibrated. Therefore, as soon as the vessel enters the dry dock, then it is water washed, preferably with fresh water, and then it is scrubbed and cleaned, and then afterwards all these undermentioned items are checked, calibrated and tested. Step number 1. As you can see, this is the typical picture of a vessel in dry dock, and these are the keel blocks what I had just mentioned. These are the keel blocks on which the vessel is resting, and then the vessel is suitably supported at the sides, so that it does not have any tendency to either slide or heel or anything like that, and it is suitably supported. And this is the picture of a graving dock, as you can see, or a basin dock, as the person standing there on the dock, and these are all the dock areas. Here, after the vessel is seated on the block, the water has already been evacuated. The dry dock is the repair or service yard for the ship. This dry docking is done twice in every 5 years, and of course, because there will be machinery and systems that cannot stop while the ship is in use, these are also serviced, repaired and replaced at the same time. For example, when the vessel is in water or in service, your generators are always keep running. Now, when the vessel comes to the dry dock, this is the best possible opportunity for us to put off all the generators, take the power supply from the shore, so that each and every generator can be overhauled, serviced and then certified and surveyed. So, all the systems, whatever machinery that has to keep running when the vessel is in water, can be put off and then they can be serviced. Okay. Large ships are brought into the graving dock that consists of a large basin with a gate that can be closed watertight. After the ship is positioned over carefully arranged resting blocks, what I call as a keel blocks, the water from the basin is pumped out. As the water level drops, the ship gradually rests on the blocks. The wooden wedges are then knocked into take any clearance between the hull and the ship and the resting blocks. This is to be done very carefully on the dry dock, so that the whole weight of the ship is borne on the resting blocks, or what we call as the keel blocks. Dry docking a ship is no small task. The ship weighs a lot and the weight must be spread evenly to the dock. While a ship is floating, the pressure holding the ship afloat is spread throughout the while the dry dock, the load is spread among the wooden blocks. There are also interferences such as the transducers and the irregularities such as the flare at the bow. In order to dry dock the ship, the dock master must be aware of the characteristics of the ship's bottom and its weight distribution. Therefore, a lot of preparations need to be done prior the vessel is dry docked. Therefore, ships carry a docking plan which specifies where the blocks are to be placed, the angle of the side blocks and the height of the side blocks. It also lists where transducers, sea chests, tail shaft and other items are located, which will help planning by the dock master in selecting the suitable blocks, placing them evenly so that the weight of the ship is distributed over the entire weight of the blocks. Right. Now, we will see some of the different types. As we have seen, the first type is a graving dock. These are called as a basin dock also. First type is a graving dock. A graving dock is a channel cut out of a basin or a river in which a closable gate is placed in front of the opening and water is pumped out. As the water is pumped out, the ship is lowered onto the blocks. This type of dock can handle the largest of vessels. Okay. Here we can see the wooden blocks or the keel blocks, and then we can see the dock wall and the dock floor and the arrangement which is normally done in the graving dock. So, this is the picture of the graving dock. The second type of dry docking is the floating dry dock. This type of dock is U-shaped and can be sunk to allow the vessel to enter and be positioned. When the ship is in position, the water in the ballast tanks of the dock is pumped out and the dock rises to meet the ship. That means this vessel can go near the dock can go near the vessel and physically immerse, come under the ship and then lift by deballasting, thereby lifting up the ship as such with it. Then the ship is lifted out of the water by the upward motion of the dock. This type of dock is typically can lift heavier ships, but not as heavy as the graving dock. The benefits of this dock are that it can be towed anywhere in the world and that it can be ballasted to lift a damaged ship with an excessive list or trim. Such kind of vessels which have become immobile due to many of the accidents, as per the old adage, if mountain does not come to Muhammad, Muhammad has to go to mountain. Same way, if the vessel cannot come to the dry dock can go to the vessel and physically lift it in as it is condition, position it and then carry out the repairs. Now, you can see the picture of the floating dry dock, and in this floating dry dock, as you can see at the bottom, WBT is water ballast tanks. So, these tanks are initially empty, and then when they are ballasted, the dock bodily sinks and goes under the vessel, and when it is deballasted, the dock comes up with the vessel. All right. So, this is your floating dry dock. You can see the dock floor, you can see the steel structures at the sides, and then the water ballast tanks at the bottom with the shore crane on the sides to ferry material to the ship. So, this is the floating dry dock which is mobile. The advantage is it can go to the ship when the ship is in distress, but the disadvantage is, since it is a floating dry dock, it is open to the vagaries of weather. When the wind and the tide and the swell can always affect the working of the floating dock, for which suitable precautions need to be taken. Now, precautions before and after flooding the dry docks. Before flooding, assuming the vessels all repairs are over, then when we are going to flood and refloat the vessel, the dock should be cleared of unused items, and then all floating debris should be removed. Check the drain plugs of ballast tanks which were removed to ensure they are in place. Therefore, when the plugs have been removed, they are all tagged and kept aside, and a responsible officer of the ship ensures that each and every plug is put back and suitably cemented or sealed, so that the ingress of water, uninvited ingress of water, inadvertent reflooding is avoided. And then the sacrificial anodes on the ship sides are checked, and the rudder and propeller, everything is in order. So, these need to be done before flooding. A lot of repairs to the hull would have been done, and they might have been carried out by way of engine room also. Therefore, such of those plates which have been doubled up or plates which have been renewed, they all need to be checked, and keep all the air vents of the sea chest in engine room open. Okay. Keep all the C-section or O-board valves open in engine room for inspection, and check if there is any deformity. Now, when we are flooding the docks, the water level reaches the sea chest level. Remove the air from the C-section water filters and seawater pumps. They need to be vented so that any possible airlock is avoided. And we start the auxiliary engine and check everything is in order, whether the seawater, fresh water, lubricating oil, diesel oil, etc. is okay, and the auxiliary engine, the ship's power is on. Till such time, when the repairs were going on, we are normally on the dock power from the shore supply, but now we are reflooding, we are starting the alternators and generators of the ships. Check all the C-section and O-board valves for leaks, and if any, and then rectify. When everything is in order, switch off the shore power and connect the ship's generator to bus bar. When everything is in order, start the seawater pump one by one and remove air from the seawater system completely. Start the main air compressor and check everything is in order. Get the main engine ready, stand by for maneuvering. Alright. See, prior entry into the dry dock, certain preparations need to be done so that the vessel can safely enter the dry dock and can be stored in a possibly safe manner. Prior the vessel's entry into the dry dock, its condition to be ascertained for satisfying the requirements while being dry docked. It includes proper draft, trim, head and its tank conditions, deballasting of the tanks for lightening, trimming and vessel's docking plan. Normally, the vessel liaises with the dockmaster, and it is the dockmaster who specifies what should be the list, what should be the possible trim, and what should be the possible draft, maximum draft with which the vessel can enter. Thereby, the vessel, when it is in water itself, has to do all the necessary deballasting and trim adjustment and list corrections before it enters the dry dock. Alright. When the vessel has entered the dock, ensure that it is held on position for draining the dock water or for the dock water to be evacuated or pumped out. Ensure that the shore power is connected and tested, and ensure water availability on the fire main. Since the vessel is going to be on dry dock, you need to take the water supply from the dock and then connect it to the ship's fire main, so that the fire main line is always kept ready for any eventuality. Ensure that the ship is ground to earth so that no shock is possible. Impress current to be switched off and ship's power to be put off. All these things are done, making preparations for the vessel to be in the dry dock. Right. Additional precautions are: ensure all sea valves are kept open to drain lines to dock. Ensure that all gas free and work permits certificates are posted at the gangway. This is especially important for hazardous cargo carrying ships like the tankers. Along with the second engineer, inspect hull, including plating for erosion, damage, etc., plugs and their condition, the condition of the anodes, sea chest grids, tail shaft, aft seal condition. Now let's go to the propeller. After removing the rope guard, check the propeller boss and blades surface condition and rudder condition. Check seawater leaks from the welds, bearing bushes and striking pad, etc. They are normally done in the presence of the classification society surveyor, who is there in attendance and will ascertain, and in case of any damages, he would possibly give you the method of getting the same in condition back. Okay, now let's see what are the important jobs done in the dry dock. After sitting on the blocks, after the dock has been pumped out, ship side and bottom to be cleaned and washed down with high pressure jet of fresh water. All safety signs to be displayed. Anchor and chain are to be ranged out for cleaning. Cables and joining shackles to be examined. Rudder to be lifted for inspection and clearance to measure and record. Bush sleeve inspected. Thrust bearing to be opened, cleaned and inspected. For a routine dry docking, the usual work to be done are hull cleaned of marine growth, painting with anti-corrosive and anti-fouling paints, sacrificial anodes are renewed, hull inspection and repairs, ship side gratings cleaned and repaired, all overboard and C-section valves are overhauled, cleaning and surveying of tanks are done. Continuing, rudder carrier ring, rudder pintles clearances are examined, propeller damage, nut looseness checked, blade polishing done, tail shaft bearing down checked, tail shaft removed and inspected, coupling bolts and holes checked for deformation, anchor chain examined, cleaned and remarked, all the underwater stuffing boxes repacked. To the ship's personnel, this is a busy time. Although shipyard workers will do a lot of work, many of the repair and servicing work will be assigned to them. The ship crew and shore people working on the ship, this is a time to be extra careful on safety. Many people are working in the same place at the same time. Some rigging workers are lifting heavy material using chain blocks, while some machinery workers are dismantling foundation bolts for the engine below. Some welders are cutting pipes just below a few feet away. Some of the workers may have removed floor plates so that they can crawl down to inspect the cofferdam. Engine mechanics have dripped lubrication oil on the floor while removing the main bearings. People on the next level are cleaning the boiler tubes and soot has spilled on the floor. The whole ship, especially the engine room, has become a mess. For safety purpose, fire hoses connected to the shore hydrants are laid out on deck and pressurized. Precautions are taken to avoid tools and other materials from falling from the sides of the ship. Safety helmets are a must. Cables or hoses do not obstruct access to the passage ways. Fire extinguishers are made available near welding sites. For a long stay or cold climates, water in engines or pipes to be drained away to prevent freezing. Dry docking is not the normal routine work for the seafarer. There may be some time to explore the land too. It could be fun. Some of the normal utilities may not be functional at that time. Often the seaman will have to use the shore shower and toilet facilities. If for any reason cooling water is not supplied to the air conditioning system on board by hoses, then there will not be air conditioning and we will have to be put up with that. Sometimes repair work has to be done on the seawater piping. The boilers have been dismantled, so there is no heating in the living quarters. Sometimes shipping companies arrange special accommodation for their crew on the shore during the docking. Okay. Now let's see what are the specifications that are required. One is the owner manager details, the tentative docking period, the vessel's dimension and machinery details, a complete list of jobs, repair items to be detailed descriptions, suggested terms and conditions and guarantees, tendering instructions for the various types of jobs. Right. The vessel superintendent will prepare a detailed dock repair specification. The company's dry dock terms and conditions shall be included on all such specifications which are sent out to tender. A copy of the current dry dock terms conditions will be attached to the bottom of the procedure. Concise details are required to avoid any opportunity for the shipyard to increase costs for unspecified work. The specification contents shall be complied using the following information from the vessel's repair reports, machinery running hours, classification society survey requirements, other company requested to upgrades and requirements. ID number, service required, the drawing, pictures, commissioning, all such information. See, this is a dry dock repair request for a particular item on board the ship. So, summarizing what we have been saying, we said dry docking is one of the most important aspects of shipping, which normally everyone should strive hard to get a chance to. It involves in placing the vessel on the shore on a dry place, so that such of those items which are not accessible when the vessel is in water can be accessed. They can be serviced, repaired, surveyed and certified, and it is a job which is a tedious job, requires a meticulous preparation, and all these items need to be done, and the dry docking needs to be done periodically to renew the class license and also to ascertain and ensure that the ship is seaworthy and fit for prolonged service. Thank you very much.